Here's your word of the day. So, as our warm-up, here's what I want. First thing that comes to mind, Andrew Bruce Stringfellow. First thing, come on. A story. Olo. First thing.
A narrative.
Vince.
Author.
Author. Kevin.
Words.
Words. I'm so sick of words. Sam.
A book.
A book. Book.
Book times 2.
2.0.
Yes!
Alright. So, oh wow. You're a good guy, I think. I'm not sure actually. Novel. This is what you read. Now, if you keep this in mind, up to this point, you have not read a novel for this class.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
This is the first novel that you read for this class. So,
If you read any novels, you'll never know.
okay. This is the first novel that you explored a summary of for this class.
Yes!
How's that? Okay. Look, you have all my erasers in here. We'll just have to cross things out. The point is this. If we go back to our timeline, which hopefully you have so deeply ingrained within yourselves that you'll be able to regurgitate it thoroughly for the final exam, our study of British literature begins when?
500.
And continues really until present day. So we'll put, is it 15?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you're the class of 2016.
Okay.
Class of 2016. You probably already knew that.
Bernie Sanders, 2 cases.
Yep.
Okay.
Bernie Sanders. He's going to win the independent vote because there's no one running against him.
Well, okay.
He's on the Democrats.
No, he's independent.
No, he isn't. He's Democratic. Yeah, he's Democratic.
Okay.
He describes himself as a democratic socialist, so.
No, but regardless of that, he is running on the Democratic.
Regardless of any of this is our timeline. 500, 2015. All right, place available for me, Sam.
Oh gosh.
Like whatever you want, right?
Wait. Sam's got this. I know it.
We're losing confidence. Waning confidence. Okay, maybe?
Maybe you go to somebody else.
700 to 1,000.
There it is.
Yeah.
Okay, this is where Beowulf occurs in our timeline. The next thing that you read was Canterbury Tales. Where does Canterbury Tales occur in our timeline? Al?
More towards 1,000.
Oh, for crying out loud. That's 500 years ahead of time. My gosh. Hold on.
1066.
No.
Oh, wait.
No.
Oh, wait.
You're killing me here. This was like 3 weeks ago.
No, I don't know.
It was also like,
You didn't miss this day. You only missed one day. It was
Wait a
poetry
minute.
day.
It's like,
I know.
it's not, no.
Sorry, we can't all be you, Jared.
He had to watch this on Vimeo and he still knows this. Oh my gosh, people. Okay, so 1066 was important for what reason?
William the Conqueror.
William the Conqueror, that's where we get our what influence?
French.
French influence. So before that, we have our 3 Germanic tribes, Jeremy.
Jutes, Angles, Saxons.
The 3 Germanic tribes come in, you get a Germanic language. You get the French influence in 1066. This brings about Chaucer, who basically writes in English rather than French, even though French was the more accepted literature at the time. And his writing occurs, or at least we place it on the timeline, at the year of his death, which 1400. 1400, Chaucer dies. Chaucer writes what work?
Canterbury Tales.
Canterbury Tales. So we have Beowulf here, we have Canterbury Tales here. Both works that you explored. Do you remember the name of the story from Canterbury Tales that involved the knight?
The Knights.
Splendid work. Do you remember the one that involved a guy selling things to get you out of purgatory?
The partner.
The partner. What was the partner's Latin catchphrase?
In English?
Yes.
Read through.
greed is the root of all evil, and the ultimate ending of this story is that people find what they're looking for. And what did people go to look for? Death. You have Canterbury Tales here. We then move into the Middle English time period with Chaucer, and then we move into the Renaissance after Chaucer, after the invention of what? Printing press. So here we have our Shakespeare, okay? Do you remember a year in the life of Shakespeare? Any year?
1680.
What is it?
1680.
No. If you could just remember 1600, that is toward the end of his creative time period in his life. He was 1564 to 1616. You've got 1400 for Chaucer. See, we're making it nice and round so they're easy to remember. 1400 Chaucer, 1600 is Shakespeare.
What was 420 again?
No?
Fall of the Roman Empire.
Yes.
Yes.
Shakespeare's famous plays, tragedies. Name 4 of them. 1 from Vince.
Hamlet.
2,
Oh, Romeo and Juliet.
3. What was it? Take a guess.
Alright.
Tragedy. Macbeth. Okay, and 4. Hold on.
Titus Andronicus.
Oh, for crying out loud. You have to throw out a fancy one. Okay, we've got Shakespeare. So, this is how we moved and progressed in our timeline. Then we read Swift. What do we read of Swift?
Gulliver.
Gulliver's Travels. How many parts is Gulliver's Travels in?
4.
4 parts, in which Gulliver travels to different regions. What's the name of the first place where Gulliver travels?
Lilliput.
Lilliput. And what is the name of the second place?
Brobdingnag.
Pretty good, actually. Good. Brobdingnag is where he goes the second time. Swift is writing, easy to remember, 1700. And right in between the two is where we put Milton. So we've got all 3 of these kind of smushed together in this time period. We're going from the Renaissance, we're moving forward. We have Shakespeare, and then we have Milton, and then we have Swift. Shakespeare, Milton, Swift. And if you remember their respective works that you read, you have Hamlet, Paradise Lost, Gulliver's Travels. That pretty much brought us up to speed until we looked at our poetry class. So all of this, am I forgetting any works before poetry? I think that's everything.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay. The poetry spans from the Shakespeare time period all the way up to modern day. Poetry was the most accepted form of literature in this time period, which is why Canterbury Tales is written in poetic form. Beowulf is written in poetic form. Hamlet is written in, does anyone know the meter? The most famous meter? Blank verse that Shakespeare always wrote in? Iambic pentameter. It's the most famous line in blank verse. It is poetry. So Hamlet is poetry. Paradise Lost, as you well know, is poetry. It's not until we get to Swift that we encounter something that is not poetry. And Swift was writing in a genre. Do you know the genre he was writing in? He was writing satire, but a travel journal. He was purporting to write a travel journal, which is a non-fiction account of journeys abroad. That's what he was assuming that people would think that he was writing. So, up until this point, everything is poetry. Poetry, 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 poetry. That's because it is the only accepted form of literature until you get to this time period. When you get here, something happens. A shift, a change in the way people are thinking. I want you to think about it like this. Comic books. Comic books in the 1950s, comic books in the 1960s, comic books in the 1970s. And this is hard because this is way before your time, it's way before my time. But how were they generally accepted? Not how are they accepted now looking back, but in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, how were they thought of by, say, the parents of the kids who read?
So when the kids grow up, they're like, oh, maybe poetry is way better.
Okay, so they were for kids. How else did the parents think of them?
They were nonsensical.
Nonsensical. Even more than that, they were trashy. So not just, just for kids, nonsensical, they were trashy. In other words, a waste of time in a negative way. Kind of like what your parents said when you watched too much Nickelodeon, or whatever it was that you watched growing up. That's trashy entertainment. It's stuff that does not help enhance your mind, and if anything, takes away from it. It's just nonsense. It's like the Goosebumps books, if you read those.
Yeah.
Those are awesome.
Trashy entertainment.
Can't really do.
And that's exactly what parents would say about these comic books. A shift happens. And I know exactly when the shift happened, because I was working at Barnes & Noble when it happened. The shift happens, I should be careful. The shift does not hit the fan, it happens. All of a sudden, they're not called comic books anymore.
Graphic novels.
Graphic novels. And in that moment, as soon as that happens, the publishing industry begins distributing not these little cheap 25-cent newspaper put together sort of things. They are now sleek. Some of them hardback. They are trade paperback, which is larger. They're more expensive, and they're cool. And they get respect. And actually, when I was working at Barnes & Noble, at one point, I referred to them as comic books in front of my manager. I said, well, we've got the comic books answer here. My manager stopped me and said, we do not call them comic books anymore. They are graphic novels. Repeat after me, graphic novels. So I realized that was graphic novels. And from that point on, that's what I called them because of the marketability. Hey, what are you reading? A comic book. Ah. Hey, what are you reading? A graphic novel. Okay? You get the point. There's a huge change in the way that this is perceived. And now, all of a sudden, these graphic novels are getting all sorts of acclaim. For instance, Time Magazine published a list in 2005. The best novels written since 1923. And the reason they chose 1923 was because that's when Time Magazine started. And so they called it the best novels of all time. On that list, in addition to the Faulkner, the Hemingway, all this, and this is all since 1923, so it didn't include Moby Dick or anything. On the list, Watchmen by Alan Moore. It's a comic book. No, it's a graphic novel. A graphic novel included in the list of the top novels of all time since 1923. All of a sudden, literary critics are saying, Watchmen, what is this Watchmen? They're picking it up, they're reading it, and they're saying, my gosh, this is amazing. And I, for one, never picked up a graphic novel or a comic book or anything. Picked up Watchmen when I read that list. I read it and I said, this is amazing. I mean, this is just as good in terms of theme, in terms of content, in terms of symbolism, in terms of overarching central purpose and significance as anything Faulkner wrote, as anything Hemingway wrote, if not more so. It was great, and then the movie came out and it's like, whatever. But, how many of you have read Watchmen? Two of you have read Watchmen. Well, okay, a couple of reasons. I don't really want to go into them. Okay, content, it's not British literature, and even though graphic novels, are gaining respectability, if I gave you a graphic novel to read, your parents would still say, why are you reading this for English class? You know that they would, because there's still a lingering perception. No? They'd be like, yes, I'm glad you're reading quality literature in that
As long
class.
as it's not that Japanese drawn stuff, it's okay.
Okay, so manga, right, is now kind of the next target, and pretty soon that's going to be generally accepted as well. So with this, we have all sorts of changing perceptions, changing cultures. I give you the novel, which, middle 1700s, right before the Revolutionary War, actually, middle 1700s, the novel is the comic book. Now, if that's my analogy, what do I mean by that, Vince? The novel is the comic book.
It's what's gaining popularity.
Among what type of readers?
Young readers?
Young readers, and in this time period especially, female readers. Now you have to understand, we're now going to get into a gender issue, a gender stereotype. And this is where it's going to get messy. That's why I'm having ladies sit in the back of the class, because there's less of a chance of them attacking me when we get really sexist with this discussion. Alright?
There's less of those, like Vince and Andrew, so.
They go down
We'll still do
first.
good, yeah.
The point is this: the novel, trashy, throwaway, cheap, only for those kids and those women who can't read what? Paradise Lost, Beowulf, Canterbury Tales. You're sitting there and you're like, I hate this stuff. I mean, I hate it. You're not going to sit around and read Paradise Lost for fun. I sit around and read it for fun. I'm weird. I'm really weird. And it also took me a long time before I saw Paradise Lost as something worth reading. Because before that, I would have much rather read Watchmen. But you sit around, you read this, you're bored. Same thing 300 years ago, 200 years ago. Same situation. And then you pick up something interesting, something entertaining. For you, maybe it's a copy of The Hunger Games or Divergent. Pre-movies, okay, because I know they're not cool anymore to read, but pre-movies, the Divergent books and the Hunger Games books. You pick them up, you're like, this is actually entertaining. This is actually good. Actually keeps my attention. Case in point, I co-taught a film class with Sakhil for 2 years. We actually started the class together. We were sitting around and said, we should teach a film class. I said, yeah, we should teach a film class. So I designed the class, we taught it together. I stopped teaching it because I got an extra English class, and then he took it over and claimed it's his. Say something right now. That's half my class. That's half my baby.
Why don't
I helped
teach
make
it?
that baby.
Oh my. So who's the dad and who's the mom?
That's a great question. That came up all the time in class. Because the students would be like, you're like a married couple. And so I'd be like, well, obviously I'm the dad. And they'd be like, actually, that's kind of true. I do see Sakhil as more of a mothering figure in this class.
The single mom figure.
Actually, it's legal now, so you guys can both be dads. Whoa!
Even in that kind of circumstance, Sakhil has a mothering nature about it.
He does.
Caring, kind of like, what is it that's bothering you? What is it that has you down?
Cell phones,
Has you sad?
people sleeping during chapel.
Okay. Ultimately, in the film class, we justified it by bringing in the English teacher, myself, and the Christian studies teacher, by having a faith element, which was basically questioning faith aspects within films. That was Sakhil's side. And then analyzing them from a literary perspective, which was my side. But to do that, we brought in a couple novels. So I chose some contemporary novels that I really liked, that I thought the students would really like. Brought in some good stuff like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is an awesome novel. Brought in some good Orson Scott Card reading. Brought in some. I threw in a Jodi Picoult book because I'm like, surely they'll like this. They don't like any of them. The whole time they're like, nah, 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 nah. So finally, I throw out The Hunger Games. Now this is the book had just come out. It was gaining popularity. Sakhil actually gave me a copy. He's like, here, read this book. I said, let's teach this in the class. We tossed it to all the students. They started reading it, and all of a sudden they were like, yeah, it's awesome, it's amazing. And we had some of our best discussions in that class over this seemingly silly, trashy book. And it gained respect and popularity and then all that kind of stuff, and then everyone started reading it. The point is this. Sometimes those entertaining substitutes, those entertaining alternatives, become the respectable thing years later. Now this is going to be hard for us to fathom.
Just imagine having video games.
I think video games is absolutely one of the next areas. Now, on some level, this also says something about our culture, which I'm not sure is completely positive. But if you look at it from that perspective, we create art, and then we also decide what is art. And you're the next generation deciding that, and so obviously your decisions are going to impact the future of art. When the novel comes out, it's trashy, it's junky, it's whatever. It's not respected in the literary scene. And we owe, for the most part, the current respect for the novel to one famous authoress, writing at the end of the 1700s, who came onto the scene and said, I'm going to write novels, and I'm going to write them so daggone well that you have to respect them. And that woman is, of course,
Jane Austen.
Jane Austen, who is now held up to be one of the, if not the, greatest novelists of all time. In taking a form that was relatively new, that was considered relatively trashy, elevating it to a certain status, and showing us the sheer possibilities. Now, if I handed you Pride and Prejudice, which the 1218 regular class will be reading,
Sucks.
you would probably say that. Because that's the typical response you have to have.
The movie.
As a senior, and especially as a senior guy, you have to say, sucks.
As a senior guy who's been
And I said the same thing before I read Pride and Prejudice. Once I read it, I thought, oh my gosh, this is absolutely perfectly written. It's like this beautiful specimen of a book. It is better written than Jane Eyre. It is probably the greatest, well, except for other Jane Austen books, it's probably one of the greatest British novels at least. The only novel I would place above it on the scheme of things would be Moby Dick, or possibly something by Dostoevsky. All that to say this, Jane Austen elevates the novel to a completely different status. Now, if you think about it, poetry is a mere combination of form, which would be meter, rhythm, pattern, with content, which would be diction, syntax, imagery. It's a merging of those things. The poem is a very carefully chosen, carefully worded thing, its own thing, an element. The novel is more vast and sprawling, given the fact that I had to give you 2 classes to actually read Jane Eyre because it's so vast, lengthy, and sprawling. The novel, although some of your words in here do pertain to it, has but a few mere requirements. And at its core is this. And on its outside is this. Think of the story in a novel and tell me what components make up that story. Any novel, what's in the story? What do you have to have in a story?
Character.
You have to have a plot. You have to have characters. And what do you have that moves the characters through the plot? Conflict. Conflict moves it forward. Otherwise, everyone would still be seated at the dinner table. Otherwise, Jane would still be seated there reading her book about British birds, doing absolutely nothing with her life, unless there's conflict. Conflict enters early on when John Reed walks up, says, "What are you doing?" and attacks Jane. Jane attacks him. Jane's thrown into the red room. This ushers in the conflict in the story, which shows us the conflict between Jane and Mrs. Reed, which brings in the conflict of Mrs. Reed sending Jane off to the little boarding school place, which then brings in the conflict of Jane losing her greatest mentor at the boarding school place when that mentor gets married, which pushes Jane forward. This conflict often gives us a series of catalysts. If you remember what that term means, what's a catalyst? It's something that starts something. And in literature, it's something that sparks a change. The catalyst, okay? We are sitting in this classroom. Why are we in this classroom?
To learn.
Really loud.
No, we're in this classroom because everyone's loud. Therefore, what was the catalyst that brought us to this classroom?
Bowling.
The bowling alley on the roof. The incessant hammering was the catalyst that sparked change in our environment. Now consider this. 10 minutes from now, whatever they're doing on the roof collapses on my classroom. Absolute collapses. We hear this loud noise, we rush down there, and we realize, had we stayed in that classroom, every single one of us would have been killed by the collapsing roof, the weight of the debris. To which we say, oh my gosh, you can't believe we moved rooms. And then this settling realization dawns upon all of us, and we say, oh my gosh, I should be dead right now. I should have been killed in that, but I wasn't. We have a new dawning appreciation for life. And all of a sudden, we begin reevaluating our lives. And all of a sudden, we decide to go out into the world and do something amazing with the rest of our summer because we've been given another chance in a situation where otherwise we should have been killed. And all of a sudden, and this would just make a good plot for a movie, except that it'd be Final Destination, essentially, except maybe you wouldn't all die. The point is this, that one seemingly insignificant catalyst, noisy room, brings us down here, ushers in a series of conflicts that bring about an entire story. The downside, life doesn't always work like that. Most likely, the roof will not collapse. Nothing will happen. We just moved rooms, no big deal. But it is the what if that the novel answers. A series of catalysts that bring about conflicts for the characters in the plot that ultimately lead to what moment in a novel?
Climax.
the climax. Everything leads toward that. The one dawning moment where everything comes together, the ah, and then the wrap up, tie up at the end. It's like the end of the Harry Potter series, you know, hurrah! And then tie in a little appendix afterwards. Oh, here's what happened with everyone 30 years later. Yay! Tied up, tied up, tied up, tied up. Everything's fine. So you have this idea, whether the novel is 150 pages, like Gatsby, whether it is 500 pages like Moby Dick, or 7 books like Harry Potter, the novel has this at its core. And all of this works together to tell a story. So the question is, how important is that story? How significant is the telling of the story? And why the heck should I have to read this story? And when you're thinking that with regard to Jane Eyre, I give you Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte as an example of the novel. Not in saying it's the greatest novel. It's not. It's good. It's entertaining. It actually is entertaining. I mean, it's got ghosts, weird people living in attics. It has hideous deaths. It has romance. It has religious hypocrisy. It's got everything you would need in a good story. But at its core, it is an example of the novel. And on our timeline, it falls very firmly in the 1800s. As we move forward on our timeline, the novel becomes more and more significant and important, and becomes recognized as a classic literary achievement. I give you Jane Austen, Charlotte Bronte, Emily Bronte, George Eliot, pen name for what author?
Oh, Charlotte Bronte.
No, Mary Ann Evans, right? Author of Silas Marner. Okay, I give you George Eliot. I give you the most famous of novelists in this time period, Charles Dickens. Classic writer of Alec.
Great Expectations.
Great Expectations and
Wait, no, that's not the
take a step back. Take a step back.
Thanks so much.
Oh, I was going to give you a chance at redemption. No shot at redemption.
Tale of Two Cities.
Tale of Two Cities, Oliver Twist, The Pickwick Papers, Bleak House, all that good stuff. Charles Dickens, boom, Victorian novelist. Then we get into Thomas Hardy, who is still famous because one of his books was just made into a movie released 3 or 4 weeks ago called Far From the
Madding Crowd.
There it is. So all of these become significant. And then we move into the 1900s with Virginia Woolf. And then we jump over the pond into America and we see Hemingway, we see Faulkner, we move forward into the postmodernists, and then we end up at today with stories about post-apocalyptic societies and dystopias, which is pretty much all we have left to go on. Because we're all zombies, reading about zombies, eating zombies, thinking about zombies, and
This
so
is
on.
the last zombie book you have read, unless you read like Pride and Prejudice, the zombie version.
I am glad you brought that up because here's my argument, and it kind of pertains to Alex's argument about video games becoming the next cultural icon. My argument is, in the wake of the death of the novel, and yes, I believe the novel's dead, sorry. In the wake of the death of the novel, I believe it is the all-engrossing, lavish, highly expensive television series that are taking the place in providing a story woven by characters experiencing conflict through the plot. Think about these television shows. Think about House of Cards. Think about Breaking Bad. Think about Game of Thrones. Think about, even something like Friday Night Lights. All of these shows, these lavish shows, American Horror Story, they take these elements of the novel and do something the novel cannot do, which is they add the visual aspect. And they differ from film in what way? What do they have that movies don't? They're longer. Television series is going to span 15 to 20 episodes. Each episode, roughly 40 to 45 minutes, sometimes even an hour in length. You have close to 12 hours to tell a story that previously films could only do in 2, at the most 2.5 or 3. You can give as lavish a representation of the human experience through that than anything else. That is why, Ola, I would say to you, this is where we're headed. And that's why I brought up the zombies, because I'm a bit obsessed with Walking Dead. And I sometimes, when I'm alone, I practice the zombie walk, the shuffling, you know, like,
You gotta stick the arms out. Yeah. You're getting past.
what's that?
You're getting
I
past.
know, I'm very proud of that, zombie.
Survive that acting career.
Okay, we're gonna drop that, because that brings up tears. Tears.
Mirth! Mirth!
I don't even have tissues to erase this thing. I've got nothing in this classroom.
but
You
there's
all sit
four
into a
boards.
room
Use your skin,
deprived.
Oh,
the
you just-
tissues of
you just
nature.
tear a piece off the chair, this is a.
Look at terror. It's the worst
You
idea.
go audition for the Vermont players.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna cross this out, and we'll just write on top of it, and we're good.
Why don't you just go to your?
I'm going to put a lovely picture on the overhead, and I want your feedback. Here it is.
If it's
Is
hard,
that
you
view
may
from your
want to
acting
roast
days?
it.
Y'all are mean. You know that? You're just mean. You're mean.
It's not our fault that Miss Potts brought that picture up.
Oh, yeah, this.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. What do we have up here, people?
Hero's journey.
Okay, I realize you've heard about this before, and I realize some of you may not have heard about this before, but what I want to suggest to you is that this is going to be our starting point for discussing Jane Eyre. So consider this. Why read Jane Eyre? Because it's an example of a novel, and the novel is a classic literary form that was turned to high status by Jane Austen, and that was written in the 1800s. You take this story, and you look at its core, and at its core, you've got a woman who goes on a journey. That's the story. Which, if you break it down, almost every single story in every single novel ever written follows one of two paths, as John Gardner said. Either person goes on a journey, or stranger comes to town. New person comes to town. If you think about it, every novel follows that framework. Great Expectations, Pip goes on a journey. Silas Marner, stranger comes to town. Great Gatsby, stranger comes to town. You get this mysterious Gatsby, Nick goes to explore the situation, and the whole story unravels. Moby Dick goes on a journey. Every novel follows this framework, and along the way, there are certain key points. That's what they call the hero's journey. And on some level, every story follows this. And on some level, every culture has had stories that follow this framework. Everything from the Epic of Gilgamesh to biblical stories of creation. We all follow this particular framework, where we take an isolated person, a hero. For our example, we're going to use Vince. Vince, come on up here. It was a little bit better when his hair was longer, a little more heroic. So we got to use our imagination a bit.
His hair is still fluffy though.
It is fluffy.
See, but fluffy isn't heroic, long is heroic.
Long is heroic.
His hair is beautiful.
Would you
I love
stop?
hair.
Y'all know about
I
Absalom
am
from the
so
Bible.
jealous.
Do you know about Absalom? Who's Absalom?
I know Absalom from Pokemon.
I don't know what that is. However, Absalom in the Bible was King David's son. He rebelled against his father, much like Icarus. He stood up to the man, the king, so much so that he waged war against his father. Absalom was known for having long, flowing, delicious locks of
I
hair.
could have just said Samson.
He's better than Samson. Samson's like, "Ugh." Absalom, that's where it's at. This dude was insane. Only problem is these long, delicious locks of hair, which were beautiful, caused him some grief. He's riding his horse. He's going along. Our hero, breeze, blows his hair up into the tree. He gets stuck. It's sad. It's sad, Vince. It's not happy. It's sad because his horse keeps going.
Die.
So he's like, it's hanging from a tree. But his hair, still kind of cool. Until the enemy general, David's general, comes up, sees him, and says, "You're Absalom. You're the one who's waging war against us." He takes 3 darts and stabs them into Absalom's heart. And King David was mad because his son was killed. The point is this: our hero stands before us. The hero is chosen not necessarily for his heroic looks, although Vince obviously has heroic looks.
Yeah.
The hero is chosen for what reason? What are the qualifications?
They are
No.
curious.
No.
They are curious.
No. There are none. There's no reason the hero's chosen. Hero's just a dude, hero's just a girl, hero's just someone sitting there who one day gets up and goes on the daggone journey. That's it. Have you seen Rango? Anyone seen Rango?
But is that like the chameleon one thingy?
Yeah.
People, look, I know you're not reading these books. At least go watch Rango. If you watch Rango, you will get more out of the hero's journey than out of my entire talk this morning. Okay? No. Because I want to talk. I want to.
You can talk during Rainbow. We are not that committed to it.
I feel like I'm on a stage. Bright lights, Broadway.
Okay.
I know you want to be an actor. I know you're dying for this.
You're investing to be right now.
That's why you were singing in class reading our intros.
Maybe it was.
You're actually here for the musical.
Maybe it is. Maybe, you know how in musicals, it's everyday life and it gives this person a song? It
Yes.
doesn't work like that. I've tried.
Anything
You're walking
else?
down the hall and you're like, we're in school, and then you wait for everyone to like join in and start like, dancing, and they don't do that. They just kind of look at you.
You know what? No, but if I'm going, Sam usually starts beatboxing. We got something. That's like the modern day musical.
I like it. It's kind of merged. How about zombie high school musical?
You can write this play and
You know what I'm
cast
saying?
yourself as the
You know what I'm
main
saying?
character.
Like we are all zombies,
Mhm.
but we're also singing, dancing zombies,
The best
which is
kind.
really hard because zombies have no rhythm. So it's like it would just be like, and then the singing would be more like the whole
The
movie.
perfect song. for you
The
to
whole
sing.
movie. Exactly. You don't need to have a good voice. You don't need to have dance moves to be in the musical. You're just the singing dead. The singing dead or the dancing dead. I like it. See what you inspired
I'd watch
Yeah.
this.
with your heroic ways?
That's awesome.
Point is this. All it takes to be the hero is that initial call, which is getting up from your chair and leaving. I'm not suggesting you get up and leave right now, because you've only got 3 classes left and you'll complete the entire year of English. However, there's a call to adventure. Along the way, after that initial call, there's going to be some sort of threshold, a stepping over, much like
Because we didn't know what stepping stone was.
I'm gonna do this all day. I'm gonna be here all day doing this. The dog gonna leave. I'm gonna be in here stepping over things. Okay? Don't worry about it. That's what I do. Obviously, Ola, it is symbolic. It's not an actual stepping over. It's a symbolic threshold. Okay? After the threshold, there begins this sort of transformation where a mentor takes the hero under his or her wing, helps transform that hero, because eventually that hero is going to go into the deep, dark, scary, horrible pit of despair, the abyss. Just kidding, it's the abyss. They go into this pit, they experience a transformation, a revelation, rebirth, renewal. They return different, changed. Then, as they go about, they have reached, and they return, changed, and with salvation that they offer to their people. I give you the Lion King. Walk me through it. Walk me through it.
Okay, so the stranger that comes to town is the baby via the womb, and so then you know, they hold up the baby, but Scar is all like, no, and kills his dad. And so then the small lion is given to like those like meerkats in a pig.
Oh my gosh.
He gets raised.
When's the last time you saw The Lion King? It's not even remotely the story.
What? That's so
You
weird.
didn't even, the only name you remembered was Scar.
Like that matters.
Simba?
Yeah, I knew it. I don't know his dad's name.
Given to the meerkats? No! And it's not a stranger comes to town story, it's a person goes on a journey story.
What do you mean? He
Think
was
about the
like,
opening of the movie. Here's Simba.
He's coming from a journey from the womb.
Yes. Come on, you can't spin this any other way.
Okay. The point is this, very beginning of the movie, I just can't wait to be king. His life is easy, it's been handed to him. Oh, I just can't wait to be king. He's a little pretentious punk, okay? He thinks he's so cool. He thinks he can just do whatever he wants, because he's Simba, you know? He's son of, is it Mufasa?
Mufasa.
Son of Mufasa, does whatever he wants. Scar causes some issues here. Scar kills Mufasa.
Be a wildebeest.
Yes. Are they wildebeest?
Yeah.
That was like antelope or something.
No. Antelopes over a lion?
Antelope. No?
I don't really know what you're trying to
It's
make.
really good to name. The Lion King. Simba's on the tree. Scar convinces him that he killed his father. Therefore, he has to leave. And if you think about it, when he leaves the vicinity of Pride Rock, he is symbolically stepping over into a different land. A land not ruled by his father, a land not ruled by the previous laws that he knew, a land not ruled by any sort of schema that he is used to. Instead, he steps over to the unknown, and he receives several seeming mentors with false gospels.
A meerkat.
What is the false gospel that these seeming mentors give to Simba?
This is a song.
People, when's the last time you saw Lion King?
Never.
My gosh!
No.
What's the song?
Hakuna Matata.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
What a wonderful.
What does Hakuna Matata mean? No worries. They say, my dude, no worries. Float on your back on these leaves and eat berries and grubs and just be like, whatever, man, it's all cool. And they go along with no worries for the rest of your days. It's a
prophecy.
problem-free
Philosophy.
philosophy. Hakuna Matata.
I got something.
That's it. Until two things happen. It's going on, it's going on. He's stuck here. He's stuck. He's stuck. He's stuck. He's stuck until a lion comes out there and sees him.
The lady. Nala.
Nala. And she says, what the heck are you doing? Out here playing games, eating berries, while Pride Rock is going to shambles. You're out here doing your little dance with your little friends. What's going on? And then the real mentor shows up
The bird.
and literally beats him over the head with the information that he needs. Who's that mentor? Yes,
Bird, yeah.
the baboon.
Oh.
Beats him over the head and shows him, you are the king. You need to go be the one they are waiting for. So what does he do? He goes to the abyss, the darkness. He faces his true self and his true fears when he faces Scar. And he takes on Scar. And Scar says, you killed your father and you need to tell everyone that. And then as Scar is about to kill him and he's at his lowest point, the point of no redemption, Scar reveals that it was he who killed Mufasa. And Simba gets the strength of the hero, experiences his rebirth, and throws Scar over, achieves his atonement, and saves Pride Rock. He follows this hero's journey, and he returns looking like the king that they need and that everyone wants him to be. It follows the journey, it follows the story. Rango's the same way, except in Rango, he narrates the story. He's like, oh, now our hero has left, and he's about to encounter a mentor on the way. And then an old armadillo comes up and gets run over by a car. It's quite funny. The hero's journey is how we set up to our story. So my question to you is, where do we fit this into Jane Eyre? How does Jane Eyre follow this particular framework? Walk me through it step by step. Where is the threshold for Jane? What do you think?
Sent off to school.
Sent off to school. What does she leave? Literally, Gateshead. She goes on a journey, and the journey begins with a gate. The gate opens, she's on a carriage, and she leaves. That threshold is both literal and highly symbolic. It's called Gateshead. That's where journeys begin. And she's leaving this house of oppression and going to a place of oppression, the low wood. The child is going into the woods. It's almost like a fairy tale sort of thing. Here she goes, the initial threshold. When she gets here, she encounters a mentor, a helper. Who is her mentor? Miss Temple. The upright, strong, righteous, pure Miss Temple. She has the helpers in the form of Helen Burns who help her see what she's really about. And Miss Temple shows her how to be strong in the face of adversity, and oh, what adversity is there, people, in the form of Brocklehurst. Look at the name significance. You know that guy's not going to be a good guy. Brocklehurst.
More like Brocklehurst. No. It's better than your weird Anton Lowe.
Jane has a problem because her mentor leaves. This ushers in her necessity of finding a different placement, and ultimately brings her into the meaning of Rochester, the dark, brooding, mysterious, Byronic hero of a man. And here he is, leading her along, teasing her, until finally he says, "I want you as wife, hubba, hubba." To which she says, "Oh." But that wasn't any schmoot, was it? Oh. They go to their wedding, only to discover what? Problem.
He married.
Dude's already got a wife and she's hidden in the attic. That's a bit of an issue. We'll come back to that when we talk about Bluebeard. The problem here is this causes the catalyst for Jane to leave. Jane reaches her lowest point of starvation, of coldness, of near-death experience. She shows up frozen, starving, alone, wet, cold, tired, and a near-death mess on the doorstep of what people? St. John, looks like St. John. St. John, his sisters, who turn out to be the cousins. Her lowest point, she experiences a rebirth, and becomes an independent woman in what way? What does she get?
The inheritance.
Money. She gets money. She returns. What has happened to Rochester?
He's blind and he lost
He lost a hand and he's blind. He has become symbolically castrated. Fortunately for Jane, not actually castrated, but symbolically castrated. She returns. He has gone from Rochester to Rochester, and she now has money. So in many ways, they've kind of become equals. She returns triumphant, atoned, and settles in Ferndean. She follows this hero's journey throughout her experiences. And in the reunion of Rochester and Jane and Ferndean, we see one of the novel's central themes coming out. And it is this central theme that leads us to today's in-class essay. So, sheet of paper, writing utensil, and we shall begin.